try to learn as much as you possibly can, and know, try to learn what you don't know, and then find out the folks that know what you don't know, and latch on to them. You won't see many people in our industry that know everything, or you just don't find, you can't. Um, but I can probably find, if you give me 20 minutes and you ask me to find something, I'll find somebody who knows it. And again, it's not necessarily somebody who works for my company. It could be somebody who works for one of the other companies out there. Try to learn everything you can, but know what you don't know, and try to find out the people you can talk to who do know what you don't know.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today our guest is Steve Ryan, District Manager with Mitsubishi Elevator in Florida. Steve started his career as a sales representative with Schindler in 1982 and spent over 28 years in sales, branch manager, and district manager roles. Steve moved to Florida with Kone in 2013, and in 2018 he joined Mitsubishi and started the Tampa branch from scratch. Steve has been in the industry 41 years and loves it. He still enjoys waking up early and going to work. So Steve, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Matt.
I'm excited to have you. I'm excited to be able to talk to you. I've obviously known you for many years, but to dig in a little bit deeper to your story, your career, and I'm just curious, how did you get started in the elevator industry?
Yeah, it was kind of unusual, I guess, in the respect. First of all, I never thought when I was going through school that of ever getting in the elevator business. Never even entered my mind. I mean, I didn't even for 1 minute think about it. All I wanted to do was have fun in college and get out and find a job close to home, which in that case was Northern Virginia. So, I worked a couple small jobs before, and I was working for Hilti right out of school, and selling fasteners to a company called Schindler Elevator. And there was a gentleman who was a superintendent by the name of Charlie Kunda, who was, at that point in time, he was kind of legend in the area. I didn't realize it. Anyways, he liked me. I was selling fasteners to him for about 6 months, 8 months. And he said, "Hey, we've got an opening for a sales rep. How would you like to sell elevators?" Well, I never even thought of it before. I didn't even know what selling an elevator meant.
Sure.
So I went down and I interviewed with a gentleman named Bill Partridge, and long story short, he liked me and he hired me. And it was probably the luckiest break in my life outside of meeting my wife. So I didn't know it at the time, but I went into an office where they had two of the best instructors in the elevator industry. Back then, they had more time to spend with us.
Sure.
And those guys taught me everything from top to bottom. I was in there with a group of guys who were all my age. Some of us, two of us had been to the same schools all the way up. I mean, from grade school, high school, college, which is unusual. So there was a bond already there. And I know it was competitive, but those guys were amazing. I mean, they would take time to teach us. It's not an easy trade or craft to learn. And despite all the mistakes I made, they stuck with me. And somewhere along the line there, Schindler Houghton became Schindler. Schindler became Schindler Westinghouse, and then Schindler Millar. And all along the way, I was lucky enough to be doing pretty well. So they promoted me. So I pretty much had every job there is to have in the freaking branch.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
how I mean, it sounds like kind of from the get-go there was some instant chemistry with the industry, with the people, with the talking about the trainers. But what was it that captured your heart, if you will, and said, "Man, I love this. I want to do this forever"?
Well, the technical aspect of it, I loved. I wanted to be able to look at drawings. I had some of that in school,
mm-hmm.
With engineering, but I really wanted to be able to understand what was going into a wiring diagram or an architectural or structural drawing. And those guys that's what they wanted me to learn. And it worked out. I took it to the extreme, though. I've always worked a lot of hours, and I would take stuff home with me and I would try to memorize what was on the drawings, which is, I couldn't do it now. But back then, and I would sit there and all night long, because I wasn't married yet, sit there and read this stuff. And after a while, they understood that I was intense and that I really wanted to do well at this. So they kind of liked it. Those guys kind of liked that. And I would always be asking questions. How do you do? So much so that I was probably a pain in the neck. How do you do this? Why do you do this? Why are we doing this? Why is this hydraulic elevator work this way? And then I found out I could talk to the mechanics and the superintendents along the same lines, and I started doing that too. So, and a lot of it I could remember because it was so fascinating to me. So I always wanted to do something technical, and I wanted to sell. Okay, sure. So I had that combination going on, and this was just I fell into it. I mean, I don't know if it was destiny or what, luck. I think it was more luck than anything else.
Right.
And to have those guys there too. I mean,
yeah. You talked about loving the technical aspect. What are some of the other things you absolutely love about this industry?
Well, I always like the people. Our folks are the salt of the earth. You can't impress somebody with BS. There's got to be substance there, and you can see that right away when you're talking to somebody in our industry. You can't fake it.
Sure.
And the industry is extremely close. When you're around for a while, you start to hear the same names, see the same people, and if you mess up, that's one thing, and you take a hit, people still respect you. But if you do things you're not supposed to do, it's hard to hang out in this business very long. You're not going to be able to develop the reputation to be successful.
Yeah. What are some of the lessons that you learned? I don't know, just early on, or maybe from your first trainers, if you will.
Well, when you make a mistake, fess up right away. And most of the time when I made a mistake, it wasn't a big deal. It's hey, I did this. I took responsibility for anything that I did. A lot of times I took responsibility for things that I didn't do, but I was covering up for somebody else, because I had some positives going with me, and of course they didn't necessarily have those. So yeah, I was, to be honest, to come out and tell people exactly what you think, but say it in a way that's not offensive. To work hard. Back then, we all worked hard. Sure. I mean, it was expected. You never found a clock in the office. Nobody knew what time it was. You look outside and it was dark, and you figure, okay, well, I guess it's time to go home. But we'd be there in the dark, and we'd go home in the dark. Yeah. Wow. Quite honestly, it hasn't much changed. It's still that way here. But so the lesson, I mean, anytime there was a new product, I wanted to get totally invested in it, understand it, learn it, try to be positive all the time. I was as much of the time as I could be. Never be too busy to talk to somebody about if they had some questions. Always want to get in front of the customer. I still have that. I try to make contact with our customers as often as I can, and it's a job sometimes prohibits it, but that's important to me. I mean, I guess there's so many things that positives that you pick up that along the way, but I tried to be a good listener, especially now, because you have a tendency when you know a little more that you want to talk. Sure. But it's actually more important to listen as you get older and as you have more experience, because you not only have to pick up what they're saying, but you have to try to pick up what they're thinking. That's hard to do. I mean, and getting off on a tangent a bit here, but when I'm in front of a customer, I can see that a lot easier than I can on a screen.
Right.
I can't. I don't know how you. I don't know how you can do this business without being in front of the customer. I don't see how you can do it just from emails.
Sure.
And a lot of folks think you can't. And I just that's one thing I think our business has to refocus on is as much as possible get out in front of the customer and be there so that they can see and hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And obviously it's worked for you for 40 plus years now, right? Just be in front of the customer and know your product, know your stuff. And
Yeah, it's harder now because a lot of times, well, everyone is in the same condition. We're all stressed. We're all maxed out. And to get a customer to agree to sit down and talk to you is tough.
right.
It's something, you got to try to do. I learn more from their facial expressions and their body language than I ever do from what they're saying. And they sometimes will flinch when you say something. Okay, well, that's a point you don't want to bring up again. But yeah, that's important to me. I try to get out as often as possible.
Yeah, no, that's great. You who are some of your biggest mentors, and do you feel like they I guess the question is what do they do to kind of help you, move to the next level and the next level beyond that?
Well, there were three guys in my career that really, really, really helped me. Uh, Richard Keene, Bill Partridge, Dave Muir. All of them were out of Northern Virginia, D.C. Bill was my first boss, and he was an incredible teacher. Um, he had a little bit of a temper, but that was good because he would challenge me. I really liked that, but he knew I would do what he asked me to do, and then I'd come back and I'd always want to know why I had to do what I did.
Right.
And at first he didn't want to tell me. Basically, it was like because I told you to. But then eventually he started sharing that with me. Plus, he was extremely good. One of the best guys in the business at being able to do a takeoff of a job, and he understood that every part of the elevator. Dave Muir was much the same way. I mean, Dave literally sat next to me. Bill was about 20 feet away. And whenever I had a question on a job, I'd shout over to Dave, "Hey," and if he didn't answer, Bill would answer down the hall. Okay. And between them, they probably had at that point 60 years of elevator experience.
Wow.
And 20 of that was probably training guys. So, I learned so much from them. And then Richard really taught me the skill of dealing with people. He was incredible at that. Even when he yelled at you, he came out feeling better, because he was always teaching you something. He was always giving you a lesson out of it. And fortunately, he didn't have much to yell at me about. But when he did, I took it to heart. And he had a way of, when he was in front of a customer, he would get their undivided attention. And that's a skill I haven't often seen. So, but I tried to. There's so many guys. The guys I worked with in Beltsville, there were so many good elevator guys in there that were colleagues of mine. Dale Broadbeck, Pete Bykowski, Doug Crane. I mean, all those guys. Dennis. I mean, there was probably, like I think we were talking about, there was probably 13 or 15 people in there. I think 10 of them ended up becoming elevator managers for various companies, and all of them were very successful. It was just a unique combination that just hit at the right time, and I was just part of it. And we'd sit there and throw things back and forth, all afternoon long, and you couldn't help but learn.
Sure.
How do you handle this? How do you deal with that? And we had an opportunity in DC where we had all kinds of equipment there. so we could see everything. And I loved it. I mean, it's not quite the same down here in Florida. You don't see all the stuff that you do up in DC. But if I was telling somebody where they should start in the industry, I'd say start in one of the larger offices where you have the ability to pick up a little bit of everything.
Right.
Uh, there was an adage in our business that everybody who's anybody went through DC at one time. And what you'd think it'd have been New York, but it was DC. So I don't know if it's still the same. I guess a lot of the younger guys go through those offices up there, but I was fortunate enough to spend time in DC, New York, Philly, Detroit, Irvine, down here in Florida. And so I've been all over the place. And I still think that what I learned there, I learned more there than anything anywhere else.
That's awesome. Almost sounds like almost like the refiner's fire. Sounds like you burned hot, but you got all the things you needed to get.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were working ridiculous hours, but we didn't even know it because we were having fun, and all of us had young families, which that was hard. That was hard part of it. But eventually we were able to figure out a way to balance it, and it worked out for all of us. But to have a group together like that, where we were all just about the same age, and have so many guys that were successful, it's just amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, I don't know that you'll ever see anything quite like that again.
Sure. You mentioned, starting selling fasteners and when you got in, did you ever think about, hey, I think I'll go try a different industry or do something else?
I did, because I didn't think I wanted to do that for my entire career. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I always wanted to work. I thought one of the majors I had in college, which was one of the 5, I guess, was management. And I always, wanted to work with people. I thought I could do a good job with that. So I wanted to do that to get to somewhere down the line, and I couldn't really do that. I mean, I guess I could have done it at Hilti, but it just wasn't enough for me to sell fasteners. Some guys I know were very successful doing that, and they've had great careers, but it just wasn't enough for me. And there was something about, I wanted to challenge myself with the engineering aspect of it, and the technical parts of it that I didn't get in the fastener industry. So
once you got into elevator, did you ever think about trying something else?
No. I thought about moving up. Sure. It's funny, when I got to Schindler, I just wanted to sell. I never even wanted to get in management. And then after about 8 or 9 years, some of the other guys started getting promoted. And I go, hey, and one of the guys, one of my good friends in the business, Dale Broadbeck, got promoted, and we actually interviewed together out in Southern California, and we went out to interview for the same job, and he and I are good friends. And but at that time, it was a job I knew I thought he was going to get it, because quite honestly, he was the best guy in the industry for that job at the time. He's a terrific salesman. It was a sales manager's job in Los Angeles, and it was perfect for him. So I had always wanted to be a manager, but a manager of the entire office of a P&L.
Sure.
So I went out and interviewed with Dale and with Mark Deldani, and I had met Mark before. And when I was interviewing with Mark, I spent half the interview telling him how great Dale was. So it was funny, because I love the guy, and I know he was perfect for the job. So afterwards, Mark said, I don't think it's this job's for you, but I'll find the next branch manager job that comes up, I'll give you a call. And I thought, okay, that was really nice of him to say that. So we all come back. Neat thing that came out of that is we both got to go to a Dodgers game that night.
Right.
I was going to see a Dodgers game at Dodger Stadium. So I got what I wanted out of it anyway. So now Dale gets the job, and he's out there. About 5 months later, he calls me and he says, "Hey, how'd you like to work in Southern California?" And I said, "Are you kidding me?" And he goes, "No." And I said, "Well, what job is it? Are you getting promoted?" And he goes, "No, how'd you like to be the branch manager in Irvine?" I said,
Wow.
"Great. Do I get to come out for another interview?" He said, "No." So I didn't have to interview for the job. I had already had, I guess. I got hired and I was out in Irvine. So then I got into the position that I guess I had wanted to get into going through college to try to manage the business. And I had 15 years in the business at that point.
Right.
So I knew a little bit about it. So I wasn't intimidated by the business. And it's something I wanted to do. So the challenge is what really turned me on. And we did really well out there. And the rest is history. They kept moving around as they needed help, but that's how I got started in management. It was I went out on an interview just to see Southern California, and the next thing you know, I was working out there. So
That's great. So from there, was it to Detroit or to
Detroit,
Philly?
yeah,
Okay.
Detroit. So that was when Schindler and Millar were merging.
Okay.
So you can imagine going from Orange County, California in February when it's 75 degrees and beautiful. And then my wife and I landed in Detroit. It was like 15 degrees and snowing.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. So I actually worked for a guy who's another terrific guy, Brad Baker, there. And, that was a challenge to merge the two offices together. We were on an 8 Mile road too. I mean, down in the heart of Detroit. I'm being
Right.
nice when I say that too. But there were some terrific people. And I got lucky and uh, some other things happened, and I ended up in South Jersey. I was born in Philly, so I was there for a year, I guess, in Detroit, and then in South Jersey, I walked into an office that was just ready to blow the doors off the numbers, and it just there's a guy by the name of Bill Littman that was there before me, and it was pretty much set up to succeed.
Right.
So we had a great couple of years there. While I was there, then I ended up being offered the job in North Jersey, which was the office was in the headquarters building for Schindler in Morristown. So I went up there. That office had a couple of rough years, so they had some terrific people there, and we ended up turning that around. And um, after I was there for I guess 4 years, I still lived in Medford, New Jersey, which is about 6 miles from the Schindler Morristown office. So I'm 6 miles from the Schindler Morristown office,
Right.
but I'm running the Morristown office.
Well,
So
it's a long drive and it's got to be very confusing like I confuse Morristown and Morristown.
yeah, it's 110 miles one way. Okay, so I used to get up at 3, drive up there, work all day. I'd let the traffic die down, head home at 7, get home at 9.
Wow.
Did that for 4 years. And then at the end of that time, Bill Whitman was being promoted to modernization manager, I think, for the entire company. And Richard said, "Hey, how'd you like to work a little closer to home?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So I went to Philly after that.
Nice.
I spent 6 years there. So, I mean, it was hard to move away from the guys in North Jersey because we had taken something that wasn't doing very well and we really made it profitable. And again, terrific people. That's kind of a common denominator. If I keep saying this over and over, almost all the offices I've been involved with have had some really terrific people. And it's sometimes the office wasn't necessarily performing the way it should, but it's not because the people they maybe they just didn't have the right motivation, or
Sure.
as Richard would often say, they didn't have the right leadership. But um, we always, everywhere I've been, we've always turned it in the right direction and made some money. Now this latest office that I'm in, we started from scratch,
Wow.
which that's a first thing. I've not done that before. We literally walked in and we had one account, one on the way. So spent basically 3 years by myself trying to get things going. And so now I think five people working between here and Miami, and then we have crews in Miami and in Tampa. So there's a profound difference between the product that I'm involved with now and the product that the rest of the industry is involved with. So Mitsubishi definitely, if you talk to anybody in our industry, they'll tell you that we have the finest elevators in the industry, and it absolutely is true.
That's awesome. It does sound like a heavy lift to start from zero, essentially.
It's something I always wanted to do. I didn't necessarily want to do it at that time in my career, but I wanted to do it. That's not something I've done. And I have to admit, when somebody says, okay, this office out in somewhere else in the country is making $2 million on the bottom line, that doesn't impress me as much as it used to. To me, here, start from scratch.
Right.
Okay, that is a little more tough. Okay, because I've done the other thing before. So yeah, I will always take pride in this office, no matter if it's 10 years from now and I'm out fishing in the Gulf. I mean, this where this place goes, it's going to be on the next group, but still, I was here at the beginning. So
Yeah. And like I said, a heavy lift. It's well, and you from our conversations, it sounds like you still love what you do.
oh, I do. I get up at 3 in the morning and I'm ready to go to work.
Wow.
So and it's still a 14 or 15-hour day, but it doesn't. I collapse when I get home, but I'm still ready to go the next morning. So, and it's all weekend. Now, most people wouldn't like that, but I love it. I must have passed on something because my son's a mechanic. So, it's for better or for worse, and he also has my work ethic. So, it's I can't. If somebody was listening to this and wanting to trying to make a decision on what career to get into, I'd urge them to look at what we do, okay, and to ask as many questions as you could, because you don't think of it as being a career for anybody coming out of school. I can't imagine what degree you would have where you'd say, man, I want to be in the elevator business, unless you had somebody you knew who had been in it before.
Right.
So it's nepotism, but that's because nobody else thinks of it. So I'll have generations of my family be in the elevator business now, since my son's already doing it.
Well, it does seem to get in your blood. So maybe it passes on genetically, right?
It must be that. So fortunately, he's much better with his hands than I am, so he can fix it. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's it's amazing to me, and I love hearing just your story, your experience, and I do there's something special about the industry, and maybe it's multiple things, like you say, the people, the technical aspects, the camaraderie. There's so many pieces that all come together to make it what it is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's cool now because you got so many different generations and different types of folks that have come into the industry. And when you hire somebody who comes in, like for an admin, let's say, then they start to think, man, I should get my son in this industry. I mean, look at this. I should get my husband in, or I should get my boyfriend in, or my sister.
Sure.
And that's what's happening. I mean, we are the number one blue collar job in the United States. And granted, a lot of it has to do with the International Union of Elevator Constructors but the training that we have and the type of people that we hire, I mean, there's something to be said for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and the knowledge you gain, the training, wherever you start, if you dig in you become very valuable anywhere you go.
Yes. I mean, it's a career. I mean, it's an absolute career. And you can retire if you're a mechanic, you can retire at 58 and you're going to be comfortable. Or in my case, you just get addicted to it and you can't retire. So There's both types in our industry, and we probably have more people working later than most industries do, especially in the offices.
Right.
So no, it's I if anybody's looking for a job, this is something that they really ought to consider. So it's really worthwhile. Great career, we get paid well. You know, I can't say enough about it.
That's awesome. I love it. I love hearing it. So we're about out of time, and I guess, and we've probably touched on a lot of this, but I think my final question is just what advice would you give to somebody maybe just starting out, just kind of encapsulate that?
Well, starting out in general or starting out and just looking for a career. I mean, there's two different
Starting
things.
out in the industry, I guess is what I
In
was
our
meaning.
industry.
Mhm.
Yeah, try to learn as much as you possibly can, and know try to learn what you don't know, and then find out the folks that know what you don't know, and latch on to them. You won't see many people in our industry that know everything, or you just don't find you can't. Um, but I can probably find if you give me 20 minutes and you ask me to find something, I'll find somebody who knows it. And again, it's not necessarily somebody who works for my company. It could be somebody who works for one of the other companies out there. We all know each other. I said before, great folks. So, yeah, try to learn everything you can, but know what you don't know, and try to find out the people who you can talk to who do know what you don't know.
Well, it sounds like if you value those relationships and you keep them alive, then you can call upon them 30, 40 years later and they're still answering your questions.
Absolutely. You'll see mechanics on the phone all the time, and you're wondering who they're talking to. They're talking to other mechanics, probably from other companies, trying to help them out. And it works that way in the office too. We all talk to each other. So whether we're wearing a black shirt or a green shirt or a blue shirt, we do tend to work together. That's neat about it. We're all elevator guys, and that's what's probably the most important about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Steve, thank you. This has been a real privilege. I appreciate your time, and it's good to talk to you again.
Thanks a lot, Matt. I really appreciate you asking me.
Thank you. Take
All
care.
right, take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.